one of silent cinema's biggest stars, was at the center of a scandal that ended his career, and his confession only made things darker. Roscoe "Fatty" Arbuckle, the man behind some of the biggest laughs in silent film, was at the center of a scandal that made Hollywood clutch its pearls. In 1921, Arbuckle found himself accused of something far more serious than slapstick. At a wild party in San Francisco, actress Virginia Rappe fell ill, and fingers were quickly pointed at Arbuckle. The accusations? Serious misconduct and wrongful death. Despite the court eventually clearing him of all charges, the damage was done, and his career was in ruins. Here's where it gets even more jaw-dropping. Arbuckle confessed that he had been drinking so heavily that he couldn't remember much of the night. Yep, the Hollywood icon admitted that his memory of the incident was foggy at best, leaving everyone to wonder what really happened. While Arbuckle maintained his innocence, the press and public opinion painted a different picture, turning this beloved star into a pariah. His confession about not recalling key details of that infamous night only added fuel to the fire, and his once shining career vanished in the blink of an eye. And just like that, Hollywood's first major scandal made everyone question just how squeaky clean their favorite stars really were. But while Arbuckle's career collapsed under scandal, another early Hollywood darling was about to make a confession of her own, one that exposed the dark side of stardom from behind the glittering facade. Clara Bow wasn't just a movie star, she was the 1920s. Her image as the carefree it girl of the silent film era made her the icon of her generation. But behind those radiant smiles and glamorous photo shoots, Clara's reality was anything but it. She later confessed that she was chewed up and spat out by the Hollywood machine. Executives saw her as nothing more than a money-making tool, and she was pushed into the limelight without regard for her mental health or personal well-being. Her confession? Hollywood took advantage of her youth and beauty, casting her in roles that only heightened her anxiety. Clara revealed that the pressure to stay perfect sent her spiraling into a breakdown, one that was only made worse by the betrayal of those closest to her. Even her personal assistant sold damaging stories about her to the press. Bow's confession about feeling exploited by the industry that made her famous exposed the ugly truth behind Hollywood's shiny surface. While Clara was adored by the public, she privately battled overwhelming mental health struggles. In the end, she walked away from Hollywood, leaving her fans, and the industry, wondering how they could have let such a bright star dim so quickly. In another part of town, tragedy was quietly unfolding in a way no one could have predicted. George Reeves will forever be remembered as the original Superman, the man who leaped tall buildings in a single bound, but his real-life story, it's anything but heroic. In 1959, Reeves was found dead in his Hollywood home from a gunshot wound to the head. Officially, the death was ruled to be self-inflicted, but rumors started swirling faster than Superman himself, and suddenly, Reeves's tragic end became one of Hollywood's most whispered-about mysteries. Before his death, Reeves had confided to friends that he felt trapped by his role as Superman. He admitted to feeling like he could never shake the cape, which led to him being typecast and unable to land more serious roles. Imagine being forever known as just one character, no matter how super. Reeves's confession about feeling stuck in a career rut was bad enough, but when you add in the rumors that his death might have been something more sinister, now we're talking about a real-life Hollywood noir. Some speculated that his death was tied to an affair with the wife of a powerful studio executive. Others pointed to the strange details of the crime scene that didn't quite line up with a suicide. Reeves's death, and his confession about his dissatisfaction with his career, has left Hollywood sleuths questioning the truth for decades. George's death left its mark, and just as one mystery lingered, Gig Young was about to drop a confession that rocked Hollywood to its core. When he won an Oscar in 1969 for They Shoot Horses, Don't They? It should have been the highlight of his career. But behind that charming smile on stage was a man hiding a much darker truth. Young later confessed that he had been battling severe alcoholism for years, even during the height of his success. Yep, that Oscar win? He was already deep into addiction, struggling to maintain control of his life, even as he stood at the top of the Hollywood food chain. Young's confession didn't just expose his personal demons, it revealed the immense pressure that Hollywood puts on its stars to stay on 24/7. He admitted to drinking to cope with the stress and isolation of his career, spiraling further into addiction as time went on. His Oscar win, while a crowning achievement, was also a turning point. Instead of celebrating his success, Young continued down a path of self-destruction. Things took an even darker turn in 1978 when Young's struggles with alcohol culminated in a tragic incident that resulted in the loss of both his life and that of his new wife. His confession about alcoholism and the pressures of fame revealed just how deep the cracks can go. Now, even when the world only sees the glittering surface, Hattie McDaniel revealed the darker side of breaking barriers. She made Hollywood history as the first African American to snag an Academy Award for her iconic role in Gone with the Wind. You'd think winning an Oscar would be the golden ticket to bigger and better things, right? Not so fast. Despite her groundbreaking achievement, McDaniel's victory came with a bittersweet twist: racism. And not just from Hollywood, she faced criticism from her own community, who weren't thrilled about her playing stereotypical roles like the ever-present Mammy. In a candid confession, McDaniel revealed just how much the constant scrutiny weighed on her. Proud of her work? Absolutely. But the whispers, the sideways glances, and the industry's limitations? That was a different story. Hollywood was quick to celebrate her win, but even after holding that shiny statue, McDaniel was still pigeonholed into playing servants and maids. "I'd rather play a maid than be one," she famously said, acknowledging the harsh reality that these roles were all the industry offered her. Her confession didn't just expose Hollywood's racism, it showed the nearly impossible barriers talented black actors faced, no matter how many awards they won. While Hattie fought for recognition in a world determined to hold her back, Montgomery Clift faced battles of an entirely different kind, this time with addiction and despair. He wasn't just a heartthrob of the 1950s. He was the heartthrob, with brooding good looks that made him the ultimate matinee idol. But while the world saw a Hollywood legend on screen, Clift's personal life was far from glamorous. Behind those intense performances and smoldering eyes was a man fighting a battle with severe addiction. Clift later confessed to close friends that the pressure of fame was crushing him, leading him to drown his insecurities in alcohol and pills. Things took a turn for the worse after a horrific car accident in 1956 that left his face permanently disfigured. Clift's confidence shattered alongside his career momentum. His once perfect looks, gone. And in Hollywood, losing your looks was like losing your currency. Clift admitted that after the accident, he spiraled even deeper into addiction, feeling like everything that once made him special had slipped through his fingers. The accident didn't just scar his face, it scarred his soul. Though he continued acting, Clift's hidden battle with alcoholism played out behind closed doors. His health deteriorated rapidly, and it became clear that the once golden boy of Hollywood was barely holding on. While his struggles were kept under wraps for years, his confession showed just how unforgiving the spotlight can be, even for the most talented stars. As Montgomery's demons consumed him, Jean Seberg would soon confess to an entirely different kind of nightmare, one that involved being watched by the very government meant to protect you. She was the epitome of cool, the darling of French New Wave cinema with her pixie cut and effortless style. But while she captivated audiences on screen, her life off-screen was anything but glamorous. Seberg was living in fear, and not just from the pressures of fame. No, her fear came from something much darker, the FBI. Yep, you heard that right. Seberg's shocking confession revealed she had been targeted by COINTELPRO, the FBI's secret operation to spy on and discredit individuals they considered politically dangerous. And what made Seberg so dangerous? Her outspoken support of the Black Panther Party. In the 1970s, Seberg confided in friends that she felt like she was being watched. And guess what? She was. The FBI didn't just spy on her. They launched a full-blown smear campaign. They spread rumors that Seberg's unborn child wasn't her husband's, but rather the child of a Black Panther leader. This wasn't just gossip, it was a vicious attack on her character. Seberg's confession about the emotional and psychological toll this took on her was heartbreaking. The relentless harassment pushed her to the brink, leading to several desperate attempts to escape as she struggled to cope with the overwhelming pressure and invasion of privacy. By 1979, Seberg's tragic story came to an end when she was found dead. Her death was ruled to be self-inflicted. But many wondered just how much the FBI's relentless attacks contributed to her demise. Her confession exposed a terrifying truth. Even Hollywood stars aren't safe from the government's dark underbelly. As this unraveled under the weight of government surveillance, Dorothy Dandridge would soon involve race and Hollywood's rigid, unbreakable walls. She was a trailblazer, the first African-American actress to score an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress. You'd think that kind of recognition would open all the doors, right? Think again. Despite her beauty, talent, and that historic nomination for Carmen Jones, Dandridge found herself stuck in the same old stereotypical roles. Hollywood's love affair with typecasting was real, and if you were a Black woman in the 1950s, the industry didn't care how many awards you had. There was only one box you were allowed to fit in. In her later years, Dandridge didn't hold back. She confessed that Hollywood's rigid view of Black actresses left her feeling trapped and frustrated. Sure, she could play the glamorous lead, but it always had to be within the limits of what Hollywood deemed acceptable for a Black woman. Even after her Oscar nod, meaningful roles were few and far between. The constant struggle to escape those limiting roles drained her, leading to financial issues and personal turmoil. Dandridge's confession was a sad reminder that even a shining star like her couldn't break through the glass ceiling Hollywood kept firmly in place. It wasn't just about acting for her. It was about proving that Black talent could do more than just play second fiddle. But Hollywood wasn't ready for all that. While Dandridge faced the brutal reality of racial barriers, Sal Mineo would expose the dark secrets of living a double life in the unforgiving world of fame. He skyrocketed to fame as the brooding, troubled teen in Rebel Without a Cause, but behind the Hollywood heartthrob persona, Mineo was battling a secret that weighed heavier than any role he'd ever play. In an era when being openly gay in Hollywood was like career suicide, Mineo was forced to live a double life. He confessed to close friends that the fear of being outed was a constant source of anxiety, and it dictated nearly every decision he made. From the roles he took to the carefully curated image he had to project. Mineo's confession was heartbreaking because he was stuck between the public image of a teen idol and the reality of who he truly was. Living in the shadows of homophobia, he was never able to fully embrace the person he wanted to be. Despite his undeniable talent, Hollywood's rigid norms held him back. The industry loved him, but only if he stayed within their narrow definition of who he should be. Then, in 1976, tragedy struck. Mineo lost his life in what was believed to be a random act of violence, though speculation arose that his sexuality may have been a factor in his tragic and untimely death. Mineo's confession about living in fear and hiding his true self leaves a haunting question. How much more could he have accomplished if he had been allowed to live freely? The world will never know. But Lupe Velez would reveal the darkest fears she faced before her own tragic end. In the 1930s, this Mexican-born actress didn't just light up the silver screen, she owned it. With her fiery personality and bold performances, Velez became a trailblazer for Latina actresses, but behind all the glitz and glamour was a woman who feared the worst: obscurity. By the 1940s, Velez's once-hot career was cooling down, and the idea of fading from the limelight haunted her. In 1944, Velez made a heartbreaking confession to close friends. She was terrified that her career was over, and she couldn't bear the thought of slipping into irrelevance. Sadly, that confession came just days before her tragic end. Velez was found dead in her home, the result of an overdose on sleeping pills. The press had a field day, sensationalizing her death with rumors of a failed love affair and whispers of a secret pregnancy. But the truth? Velez's own words spoke volumes. The thought of no longer being a star was too much to handle. Hollywood's love can be fleeting, and Velez felt its sting firsthand. This was Hollywood's heartbreak, but over in the world of sports, Lyle Alzado's confession was brewing that would shake things up just as dramatically. He wasn't just a football star, he was a wrecking ball with a helmet. Known for smashing through offensive lines like they were made of paper, Alzado was the NFL's ultimate tough guy. But behind that hulking frame and wild man reputation, a secret that would eventually take him down. In the 1980s, Alzado dropped a bombshell confession. He'd been using steroids for over 20 years. Yep, you heard that right. 20 years of injecting his way to football dominance. Alzado didn't just dabble in performance-enhancing drugs. Oh no, he went all in. Anabolic steroids, human growth hormone, you name it. If it promised bigger muscles and a competitive edge, he was on board. But here's the kicker. Alzado wasn't proud of it. His confession was more of a desperate cry about the lengths he'd gone to stay on top in a league where bigger, stronger, and faster were the name of the game. He wasn't alone, he just happened to be the guy brave enough to admit it. Then came the gut punch. In 1991, Alzado was diagnosed with brain cancer, and he was convinced it was payback for his steroid abuse. His confession about the dangers of steroids hit hard, just like his tackles. He didn't mince words, admitting that the drugs gave him the muscles but took away everything else: his health, his peace of mind, and ultimately, his life. Alzado's condition deteriorated rapidly, and the world watched as this once mighty football warrior faded away. But even as his body failed him, Alzado didn't go quietly. He became an anti-steroid crusader, warning young athletes not to follow in his chemically enhanced footsteps. When Alzado passed away in 1992, he left a message that shook the sports world. His brave confession forced the NFL and other leagues to finally start talking about the elephant in the locker room: steroids. Yet another young star was about to expose the dark side of early fame and the devastating toll it can take. Jonathan Brandis was the teen idol of the 90s, the heartthrob plastered on every fan's wall, the star of hit shows and movies. It seemed like he had it all. But when the teen roles dried up and the offers stopped coming, Brandis found himself slipping into the shadows. By 2003, at just 27 years old, Jonathan tragically took his own life, leaving fans devastated and confused. But those closest to him weren't as shocked. Brandis had been battling severe depression for years, a silent struggle he kept behind that charming smile. He confessed to friends that he felt like a failure after his teenage fame faded, unable to cope with Hollywood's harsh reality. The transition from teen heartthrob to adult actor wasn't kind to him. Hollywood had moved on, and despite his talent, Jonathan couldn't find his footing in the industry anymore. That rejection hit hard, and he confessed that he just couldn't shake the feeling of being left behind. Heath Ledger would also soon reveal just how deeply fame can cut into the soul. Her Joker in The Dark Knight? Iconic. But the behind-the-scenes story? Way darker. Ledger's commitment to the role wasn't just impressive, it was all-consuming, and it came at a massive cost. While audiences were mesmerized by his chaotic portrayal of Gotham's greatest villain, Ledger was battling something much scarier than the Joker. He confessed to friends that the role left him struggling with severe insomnia, sometimes sleeping only 2 hours a night. His mind couldn't switch off. He couldn't escape the chaotic energy of the character, and that left him feeling deeply isolated. In the weeks leading up to his untimely death in 2008, Ledger admitted that he was utterly drained, mentally, physically, and emotionally. His friends were shocked when he opened up about feeling lost and disconnected from reality. Ledger's accidental overdose on prescription medication revealed the immense pressure he was under, showing just how dangerous method acting can be when you take it to the extreme. It's easy to see the Oscar-worthy performance, but behind the mask, even the brightest stars can be battling inner demons that no one sees. And here's a young pop star who was also grappling with her own battle against the pressures of fame. Amanda Bynes was the queen of 2000's teen comedies, But behind her bubbly on-screen persona, she was slowly unraveling. In 2013, she publicly spiraled into a mental health crisis that left fans shocked. The most jaw-dropping part? Amanda herself later confessed that the pressures of child stardom had contributed to her breakdown. From the age of 7, she was thrust into the spotlight, never given a moment to just be a regular kid. She revealed that the constant scrutiny over her appearance and performance caused her to develop body image issues, which later spiraled into substance abuse and erratic behavior. Amanda also confessed to being diagnosed with bipolar disorder, a revelation that explained the increasingly strange and erratic tweets she posted during her public meltdown. Her biggest regret? Amanda admitted that she was struggling with both mental health and addiction issues when she retired from acting, a decision made hastily under duress. Although she has since been on the path to recovery, her public breakdown remains one of the darkest confessions of what happens when Hollywood chews up and spits out its stars.